Very much, Councillor Carroll, and then I had Councillor Layton to speak.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. In 3 minutes, I'm just going to try to make one point very clear, is that I think, unfortunately, I think we're taking on one of the traits of the last term of council, and that is to try to put off the dealing with quite real financial problems today to tomorrow. And I'm going to try to illustrate that through a couple things. First off, I was going to sing the praises of our planners in hopes that I could compel folks in the committee to reinstate the heritage planning positions that were unfortunately revised in the budget coming from Budget Committee. But I'm happy to hear that I think that that's going along. I had at least hope to hear something about our accountability officers, based on what our experience in the last term of council, as well as what we heard throughout the mayoral debate, was that they wanted more accountability and integrity at City Council, and based on some of the things I've read that were said during that time and prior to that, that we would have great fans in the administration of the Ombudsman and the Integrity Commissioner. Unfortunately, though, what we're seeing is their rather modest budget requests that have been flatlined for years being eliminated, and that's a shame. Most of the savings that we've actually found in this year's budget and accommodating the increases in our base budget are being found by tightening things up, the projections up. They're not about finding new money or new efficiencies. It's about making projected actuals. So in the $25 million, you see about 2/3 of it are a result of just tightening things up. We then also shifted a bunch of money from our waste budget into from our waste budget that's actually tax supported from the rebate back into the operating tax supported budget. So this is key, that we're not finding these new monies. We're in fact just adjusting our actuals to be less conservative about them, which I thought is an interesting twist. We're leaving some pretty significant holes in there. The child care reserve is going to be gone in 2017. 2,000 subsidies gone. $25 million. We're not preparing for now. We should be. Well, we've essentially done. I love this graph. Just shows how you just keep piling them on the other year. Well, I drew on what this year means, taking off the $25 million. It's legitimate. The tightening of belts counts. It's good. But we're really just continue to stack them, to just keep pushing them off, rather than do what the least expensive way of doing it, which is do, yes, a property tax increase this year, and next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, to accommodate simply for this downloading in services from the provincial government with respect to housing. By ignoring the problem, it's just going to cost more. That's what staff have told us. By ignoring the problem, it's just going to make it all tighter next year. What happened in 2011 when we put a 3%, when we didn't increase by inflation, is we put a $75 million hole in our revenue. And then in 2014, we went a percent shy of inflation again, and when it calculates out to about 4.3%. Well, think of what that number is equal to, just over $100 million. The 86 million we would need to do the work or to fill the gap from the provincial download, as well as make more room throughout the process to accommodate some of the other service increases that we would have liked to do this year, including all the great increases that had been promised about transit, half of which were retracted back. So unfortunately, it's just not a sustainable budget yet again.
I forgot to reset the clock, but I think we gave you an allowance, and
thank you.
To my best guess.
Very kind. Thank you.
What? No, it wasn't 7 minutes. He had 4, but that was only because I forgot to reset the clock. I apologize. That would bring us to Councillor Perks to speak, and then I have Councillor Doucette. Anybody else from not on the committee that wishes to speak? Okay, there we go. Councillor Perks.
Executive.
If Councillor Layton got 4, do I get 4.5?
No, you don't.
Oh, well.
I'm going to be watching with an eagle eye on this.
Eagle eye, there we go. I want to follow on some of the comments Councillor Layton was making, because they're very important. At the end of the presentation we had from the CFO today, he gave us the outlook for what 16 and 17 would be like. And the outlook said this: if we increase TTC fares next year, and if we do a property tax increase bigger than this one all the way to inflation, not a little bit below, but all the way to inflation, we still have 300, 310, 320 to close. Now, in previous years, we've been able to close that. But the way that happened is that the land transfer tax and other revenue estimates were made was well below the actual for what we had in the prior year. This is the very first year since the introduction of the land transfer tax that the projected revenue for 2015 is the same as what we brought in 2014. Similarly, this is the first year since the global financial crisis that the welfare caseload that we're putting in is the actual. There's no room there. There are instances all over the budget that you have taking away all the flexibility, all the things that generate surpluses, and all the things that allow us to close the gap next year. And on top of that, we expect that we are going to begin to expand public transit even further because we're not doing the complete introduction of the restoration of services this year. We will have annualization of the programs being introduced this year. We will have a new poverty strategy that comes in that will be bound to cost something. The budget that you are proposing today will not put us in a position to meet our core service needs or the commitments that have been made by this administration. It's simply not possible. It's a circle that can't be squared. In prior years, I want to underline this. We've been told in prior years that the problems were solved by efficiencies. In fact, no, they weren't. We've heard recently that the efficiencies that we were told were found by the previous administration through their core service review, the $110 million that we were told had been found, was actually 16. The real way we've been closing the gap is because we have had a lot of slack in our estimates. Well, you've got none now. You're also assuming a fare increase and a property increase right at inflation, and then on top of that, $300 million in savings. This is not a sustainable budget. The property tax increase is too low.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Councillor Doucette. Because I presume I'll be the last speaker with respect to the budget as a whole. I won't repeat what I said at the outset, except that I will repeat the thanks to the members of the committee and members of council who have contributed to the discussions today. And to say, I guess I do want to respond a little bit to the suggestion that everything could be resolved here, if I can put the resolved in quotes, through tax increases, because we've heard a lot of comments today, and I think they're comments that are appropriately sensitive, or at least making sure we're sensitive to the fact there are people out there who are struggling, and that it is a balance that we've had to achieve and that we're trying to achieve here and at the council coming up between tax increases and financial burdens on people, both young and old and in between, versus investments in capital, both human capital and hard capital. And we've got some hard work ahead, but I just want to say that I reject the kind of dark, foreboding pictures of a situation that we're in for 2016. I haven't been here for long, but I've been watching this place very carefully for 25 years, and I don't think there was one year in that 25 where there weren't these dire predictions of financial, imminent financial disaster because of the size of the challenge that was in front of us at the beginning of the process. And frankly, when most of those predictions were made in prior years, they were a lot further along in the year than we are now. I've said before for myself, and I know Councillor Crawford said it earlier on today, that we're going to begin work on the 2016 budget the day after this one is approved by the City Council. And I think that gives us time, if we do this in a concentrated, focused way, to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a position of a false choice, because the false choice, you heard it, presented to you earlier today, wasn't just a much bigger tax increase for this year, but as was said in those remarks, a similar tax increase next year, and the year after that, and the year after that. And I'd say that we can, I believe, exercise the discipline of allowing ourselves a tax increase at or below the rate of inflation and continue to invest in people. Will that require some additional investment by the other governments in this city and things that it needs and things that, frankly, they need to make sure that we can be fully contributing partners with them in the economy of this country and in the social well-being of 3 million of its residents? Yes, it will. Will it involve us making our own efforts to run our own government better, which I'm absolutely convinced we can do? Absolutely. But the notion we should just resign ourselves now to the fact that the only way out of this is through big tax increases this year, next year, and the year after that, and the year after that, I don't accept it. I think that's an admission of failure, and I think it's an admission of defeat before we've even begun the process of dealing with next year's budget. And so I think the days of these kinds of false choices should be over. And I think this budget has been a good example where we have actually worked together and not presented ourselves with a bunch of false choices, but rather said, how can we achieve, admittedly, I will say admittedly, with what I call this smoothing solution that we've offered for the in the face of the cutbacks from the province. But I think that putting that aside, that we've worked well to find ways in which we can limit the tax increases on people and at the same time invest in people and invest in the capital of the city. And so, needless to say, I'll be voting for the budget. We'll deal with all the various motions as we go through, but I think this is a budget we can be proud of because it does respect people and their money, but it also respects the need to invest in this city and to make sure that we can build it up and build up the people within it, especially those who need a little bit of extra help. So I will stop there and ask the clerk if she will help me with the motions that we now have to go through to deal with the questions of